The history of the CSME can be traced back to 1968 with the establishment of the Caribbean Free Trade Association, also known as CARIFTA, which served the limited purpose of removing tariffs and other barriers to intra-regional trade in goods. In 1972, Commonwealth Caribbean leaders at the 7th Heads of Government Conference decided to transform the Caribbean Free Trade Association into a common market and establish the Caribbean community of which the common market would be an integral part. In 1973, the integration process was deepened through the signing of the Treaty of Chaguaramas. Although a free trade area had already been established, CARIFTA did not provide for the free movement of labor and capital or the coordination of agricultural, industrial, and foreign policies. In 1989, at Grand Anse, Grenada, CARICOM heads of government decided to transform the limited common market as originally conceived in 1973 into a fully fledged single market and economy. The CSME seeks to convert its 15 member states into a single enlarged economic entity, which will further reduce cross-border restrictions, thereby facilitating the free movement of all final products, goods, labor, and services, including capital. However, only 13 states are currently actively participating in the CSME. By 2002, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas had prescribed the removal of existing barriers and the establishment of a single market space in which not only goods, but services, capital, technology, and skilled persons should freely circulate, where Caribbean citizens would enjoy new and unfettered rights of establishment of enterprise anywhere in their region. Under the CSME proposal, university graduates, athletes, musicians, artists, entrepreneurs, supervisory and technical staff would have the right to move free within the region. The CSME's main objectives are 1. The full use of labor and full exploitation of the other factors of production, and 2. Competitive production leading to greater variety and quantity of products and services to trade with other countries. It is expected that these objectives will in turn provide improved standards of living and work and sustain economic development. However, concerns and fears have also been expressed about the CSME. These include less developed economies will be threatened, dislocations in labor in the weaker sectors in member states, removal of beneficial trade barriers, and a strain on the region's aggregate financial sector. The key elements of the Caribbean single market and economy include 1. Free movement of goods and services through measures such as eliminating all barriers to intra-regional movement and harmonizing standards to ensure acceptability of goods and services traded. 2. Right of establishment to permit the establishment of CARICOM-owned businesses in any member state without restrictions. 3. A common external tariff, a rate of duty applied by all members of the market to a product imported from a country which is not a member of the market. 4. Free circulation, The free movement of goods imported from extra-regional sources, which would require collection of taxes at first point of entry into the region, and the provision for sharing of collected customs revenue. 5. Free movement of capital through measures such as eliminating foreign exchange controls, convertibility of currencies or a common currency, and an integrated capital market such as a regional stock exchange. 6. A common trade policy. An agreement among the members on matters related to internal and international trade, and a coordinated external trade policy negotiated on a joint basis. 7. Free movement of labor through measures such as removing all obstacles to intra-regional movement of skills, labor and travel, harmonizing social services, providing for the transfer of social security benefits, and establishing common standards and measures for accreditation and equivalency. Furthermore, there are 9 protocols which are included in the establishment of the CSME. 1. Restructuring the organs of the community. 2. Right of establishment, services, and capital. 3. Industrial policy. 4. Trade policy. 5. Agricultural policy. 6. Transport policy. 7. Disadvantaged countries, regions, and sectors. 8. Competition policy, consumer protection, and dumping and subsidies. And 9. Dispute settlements. Not all Caribbean states are part of the CSME, and there are even some states signed into the agreement that have not fully adopted all the protocols involved, defeating the sole purpose of the CSME. The ultimate goal of the Caribbean single market and economy is to create a single market economy in which the coordination of exchange rate, interest rate, commercial banking, and security policies will result in having a single currency, a Caribbean central bank, and a regional stock exchange. However, there are many shortcomings that are sufficient to stop the development of the CSME. The emergence of the single market meant that legal and administrative restrictions affecting trade, labor, and technology within the CARICOM region would generally be a thing of the past. However, one of the major issues for each state is whether existing businesses and workforce can survive the increased competition when businesses that are more successful enter the local market, since intra-regional trade will be encouraged. CSME is assumed to be about survival, and many states will be uncertain as to whether their local economy can survive the transition. Businesses in states that fail to develop their capacity or lack the sufficient resources will surely face huge economic calamities and crumble. The question of whether these states have the resources to deal with negative externalities such as crime and poverty is yet to be strategically answered. Dislocations are bound to occur in the CSME as the doors open throughout the Caribbean to accommodate the freedom of movement of people. The countries of the Caribbean are not blessed with the same quantum of resources and are not at the same level of development. Also, the value of the currencies and the wage levels vary throughout the region. This proves to be a challenge for the freedom of movement of people in an absolute sense. There will be uncertainty, insecurity, fear, and resistance to change, and people in some countries will be concerned about their jobs at the advent of CSME, if this means an influx of more productive and cheaper wage earners in the local marketplace. Indeed, one is reminded of the saying that one man's meat is another man's poison. What is good for one person may be bad for another. What is pleasant to one person may be unpleasant to another. Moreover, there are also the implications for labor that may come about by this process. The movement of labor is limited to qualified and skilled persons, and the idea that with the emergence of the CSME will result in the mass movement of unskilled persons to more prosperous or flourished member states seems unlikely. There is also the potential for an increase in local unemployment as a result of a greater number of people competing for limited jobs. Another concern is the increased pressure that may be placed upon social and economic institutions in the event of mass migration and their ability to cope. This migration of skills presents a significant drain on resources. Although the formation of the CSME may be seen as a way of pushing the region towards greater economic competitiveness in response to the new international economic order dominated by marketization and the loss of preferences, there will also be implications for the operation and organization of businesses within the Caribbean. The effects will, however, be most threatening and pronounced in small business enterprises. There is likely to be a series of size-related issues when exposed to increased competition with larger firms in a unified internal market. This is largely due to the fact that bigger firms tend to be much more advanced, specifically in terms of the level of technology, as a result of insufficient funds on the part of the small business enterprises. For example, small firms are disadvantaged because they are generally limited to operating on a relatively small scale simply because they do not possess the proper facilities and infrastructure to compete on larger scales. Furthermore, the establishment of the CSME mainly creates benefits for the more stable and industrialized countries of the Caribbean, such as Trinidad and Jamaica. Businesses from these so-called bigger countries now get the opportunity to enter smaller Caribbean countries and dominate their markets, limiting the possibility of growth of businesses in the smaller countries. There is also the possibility of these smaller countries becoming heavily dependent on the businesses of the bigger countries, limiting development even further, especially in the event of failure or crash of one of these businesses. The increased economic competition as a result of the dismantling of trade preferences of some of the region's major exporting products, such as banana, coffee, and sugar, resulted in the stagnation, decline, and/or significant economic adjustment of some industries. In the case of Haiti, agriculture remains the key sector in the economy, accounting for approximately 1/4 of GDP, with forestry and fishing accounting for a further 7%. The sector is the principal source of employment for about 2/3 of the population. Coffee is by far the most important export crop in Haiti, with approximately 380,000 peasants engaged in its production. However, history shows that performance has been on the decline. Production in 1995 and 1996 was just 13,000 metric tons compared to 27,000 metric tons in 1992 and 1993. Earnings in 1995 and 1996 were $10.2 million, some 58% of total agricultural export earnings. Sugar and rice are also traditionally important agricultural commodities, but they both face stiff competition from imported commodities. Furthermore, consumption of harmful goods may be encouraged since the free market economy might find it profitable to provide goods which are in great demand, ignoring the fact that they might be harmful to the society. Additionally, the resistance to the removal of trade barriers also serves as an issue with the development of the CSME. This resistance could stem from the dependence of tariff revenue by some countries. Free trade exposes their true lack of competitiveness. The CSME envisages that member states will harmonize taxation regimes and also pursue fiscal policy integration in a similar manner to the European Union. However, in smaller, less developed economies such as Haiti, this may prove to be problematic as the introduction of higher taxes may negatively impact the livelihood of the people, and this would not be economically viable. The extent to which regional firms will be able to compete will depend critically upon what happens in the financial sector. The expansion of fiscal policy of economies in Caribbean countries has led to excessive debt creation in the least developed Caribbean countries, such as Dominica, Antigua, St. Kitts, and Grenada, through government expenditure to facilitate development of proper infrastructure such as roads, education, transport facilities, and communication technology to enable the efficient trade of goods, services, and people across the region as well as across international borders. Additionally, there exists undue pressures on monetary policy to maintain balance and stability of exchange rates. This is predominantly due to the expansion of monetary policy to facilitate the same expansion of fiscal policy. With the expansion of fiscal policy to facilitate trade, monetary policy of the economies in the Caribbean has difficulty adjusting its exchange rates in such a way that would allow the economies to greatly benefit. This is as a result of the differences in value of the currencies of the Caribbean region's countries compared to that of other major economies such as the United States of America and the European Union, which creates additional problems with regard to imported products being more expensive in domestic countries, causing a strain on the region's economies. The Caribbean region imports a great deal of products, which significantly increases inflationary pressures. Moreover, the stability and growth rate of economies are different, And so there is the widening of the disparities between the different economies of the region's countries due to the development status of the different economies, which is directly tied into the availability of resources to facilitate economic development. CSME's main priorities do not include environmental ethics, producers' responsibilities, and transboundary risk management. These aspects, however, are critical to sustainable development of the Caribbean's economies. Yes, the CSME can be seen as an ambitious project, but there are far too many problems and challenges faced by Caribbean economies with its establishment.